The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Harborough again, everybody. Now, we are in Leicestershire, where I'm stood just here, but only just. You can see behind me there's a bridge, and that crosses the border into Northamptonshire and to the lovely little village of Stanford-on-Avon, which I will cover at some point. However, in this particular episode, we're not going to be talking so much about a village. We're going to be talking more about a big hall, which you can find on this very county border. If I turn the camera around, you'll be able to see sort of the vicinity of where that hall is. It's over there. And that sits within Leicestershire, even though really, technically speaking, it should be part of Northamptonshire. It's a very strange situation with the parish boundary here. This is WESTRILL and STARMORE. WESTRILL and STARMORE, West Stream and Stonemore. Rounding off this little run of parishes in Harborough, don't worry, I will be back very soon, is one of the least populated in the whole of Leicestershire. This is WESTRILL and STARMORE, a tract of farmland between Swinford and South Kilworth, which we crossed last time we were in this area. Although it's named WESTRILL and STARMORE, you won't find a village with either of those names here. The name WESTRILL refers to a stream, and a pretty insignificant one at that, which crosses this farmland. The only reference to the WESTRILL name you'll see on maps is that of Westrill Spinney within the parkland of a stately home. More on that shortly. As for STARMORE, that was a village centuries back, but now it's just a patch of earthworks. It had an interesting alternative name though at one point, Stormsworth, and here we'll discuss what happened to it. Other than that and the farmland, WESTRILL and STARMORE would struggle to possess anything else of note if Stanford Hall didn't exist. You see, the River Avon is our friend here. Because it forms the county boundary with Northamptonshire, Stanford Hall sits within Leicestershire, detached from the village of Stanford-on-Avon over the county boundary. As the principal building in the parish, therefore, a lot of time will be spent in this video talking about it. You might find this one interesting if you come from East Yorkshire, because Stanford Hall is linked to some people who originated from there. It's a very unusual episode, this one. There's no walking route, but there's plenty to get stuck into. So let's do that, shall we? This is WESTRILL and STARMORE, and as far as villages go, this is about as developed as you're going to get. The parish is a tract of farmland and parkland primarily, and barely anyone lives out here. There's the odd isolated cottage or farm, but WESTRILL and STARMORE are nothing more than just names. There are no villages here. WESTRILL refers to a stream, while STARMORE is the name given to a former village which has now disappeared. So where was STARMORE in all of this then? Well, we've been driving past it. On the left-hand side of your screen, there's a series of fields with a lot of earthworks in them. They were the site of STARMORE, although when it was a village it had a different name, Stormsworth. Stormsworth, when it was a village, was made up of a small group of houses, gardens, yards, streets and paddocks. It probably had a green, a manor and a church, and its community was devoted primarily to agriculture, not unlike many other deserted medieval villages across the nation. The deserted village site at Stormsworth survives well. It possesses more documentary evidence than most similar sites in Leicestershire and has links with Selby Abbey in Yorkshire. Stormsworth was situated to the north of the South Kilworth to Swinford road on ground sloping down to a stream which forms its western boundary. It includes the earthwork remains of the village and that of a fish pond. The earthworks occupy an area with maximum dimensions of 300 square metres. A holloway measuring a maximum of 8 metres wide and 1.5 metres deep runs from the southwest to the northeast and is joined by a series of house platforms which are mainly situated to the centre of the area. Well-preserved medieval ridge and furrow ploughing, considered an integral part of the monument, occurs on part of the western slope, extending to the top of the ridge where it adjoins the village boundary, demarcated by a ditch. The fish pond adjoins the road to the south and the stream to the southwest. Stormsworth was listed in the Domesday Book as possessing 2 manors. Between 1069 and 1086, it was given to Selby Abbey in Yorkshire and retained by it until the dissolution in 1539. Selby Abbey is actually the reason why it no longer exists. It was depopulated by order of the Abbey by 1500. In 1086, there were 15 families at Stormsworth and as many as 35 households by the time of Edward I. The village is also known to have contained a chapel which was dependent on Swinford a mile or so to the west. So with nothing much more to see, that should be that, shouldn't it? Well, not exactly. Okay, so we've come through Stanford-on-Avon and now we've got to the point where we get to the gates of Stanford Hall, which is in Leicestershire because it's on the Leicestershire side of the river. It's very weird if you ask me. I think it all should be really in Northamptonshire and all belong to Stanford-on-Avon, quite frankly, but I don't make the rules, other people do. So now we're going to pass the gates of Stanford Hall. There's the sign saying Stanford Hall, and those indeed are the gates. Now we can't go down this drive to Stanford Hall because it is very much a private drive and very much a private property, but there you go, you can see Stanford Hall there in all its glory over there in the distance. Let's talk a bit about this and why it's such an important property. These are the gates of Stanford Hall, a stately home near the village of Stanford-on-Avon. That village is actually in Northamptonshire, over the county boundary, but thanks to the River Avon, the hall is actually within Leicestershire instead. Stanford-on-Avon will get its own episode at a later date, but the obscurity of the boundary means Stanford Hall is all ours in this one. Stanford Hall is the ancestral home of the Cave family, who first came to Leicestershire from East Yorkshire in 1430. The present hall was built in the 1690s for Sir Roger Cave, the 2nd Baronet. Its architect was William Smith of Warwick, and it was described by the author Simon Jenkins as the perfect William and Mary house. The River Avon flows through the grounds, complete with a weir. Stanford Hall is Grade 1 listed and it's known for a few things. For starters, it was here that the aviation pioneer Percy Pilcher built some of his early gliders in the 1890s, along with a powered flying machine that many historians believe was capable of flight. We'll never know if it was though. He was killed nearby in an accident before he could try it. An exact replica of Pilcher's The Hawk glider is exhibited at the hall. In a field over the boundary into Northamptonshire, there's a monument related to him too. We'll catch that when the time is right. During World War II, the nuns and pupils from the Sacred Heart Convent and School in Roehampton, London, were evacuated to the hall. Their premises were so badly damaged that when the war ended, they had to relocate to Woldingham School near London. From 1947 until 1949, it was the country branch of St Mary's Town and Country School. By that time, the roof was uncared for and in serious need of repair, but the Historic Buildings Council recommended a large grant for restoration, and the hall was open to the public in 1958. Although it's only open to the public on limited days every year, among the attractions are guided tours of the hall and its grounds, a forge, a beautiful rose garden, a shop and a tea rooms. The house has a significant collection of antique furnishings. For example, one room has its original 17th century furnishings, including a refectory table and a set of Charles II chairs. The grounds of the hall are used for concerts and/or classic car shows, including the Wartburg Trabant IFA Club Rally. Since 1983, it's also hosted the annual National Mini Day for owners of the lovable British icons. The grounds hosted the first Stanford Hall Half Marathon and 10k running race in March 2014, and since 2003, Stanford Hall has been the host to the Fireworks Championships, the UK's leading firework competition. Some of the parkland is designated a site of special scientific interest called Stanford Park due to the diversity of lichen species on the trees. Stanford Hall has its own website where you can view a timeline of the building, its links to the Cave family, and some notable events. Now, I thought what would be a nice idea here would be to include the contents of that timeline so you can appreciate how much history this place has. Enjoy! so that's a bit about Stanford Hall and why it's such an important property. Now, to finish this episode off, we're going to drive down the road that runs past its main gates towards a caravan park, and that's really the only other thing of interest here in WESTRILL and STARMORE. And that's that, folks. WESTRILL and STARMORE is definitely not your average English parish, is it? Join me for more in Harborough very soon. Via this caravan park, it's time to move on. Bye for now. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.